Here's what's coming up on today's show.
We're working for you to put these analysis together, and what ultimately comes out of analyzing this stuff is we build out a real plan specific for you.
Welcome to the How Money Works podcast with Craig and Jennifer Moser of Maestro Wealth Advisors, serving you throughout the Triad of North Carolina for more than 30 years.
Well, let's get into this conversation, guys. So, look, they did this survey, like I said, Financial Advisor magazine, completed by nearly 400 advisors, majority of whom had been in business for more than 20 years. So based on this survey, let's see what other financial advisors experience with clients, and does it line up with what you guys see, and also just what's your take on this stuff, right? So first one, advisors in the survey said 52% of clients are seeking out financial advisor help with retirement planning, okay? 34% primarily looking for someone to just build wealth. Is that does that shock you at all? Does that seem fairly accurate, or what do you think?
What do you think, Jennifer?
I think based on our practice, our radio show, and really the venues that we're showing Maestro, I would say we probably have a larger percent for retirement planning.
Right.
Even though they might be younger, maybe they're 10 years from retirement, but they are thinking of that end goal. What are they going to do? How do they need to approach it? So really looking at the retirement planning. During that time, obviously, we have to build the wealth. But then we're going to have to look at doing that retirement income analysis and be able to create those income streams. Wouldn't you say, Craig?
Yes. Folks that work with us are really looking for financial planning engagement, not just looking for a stockbroker. Somebody helping you to buy things that appreciate, I'm all in. I think that's great. But to me, it's one of the things that you need to be doing when you're investing and saving for a future goal. So for us, typically it's retirement. We're looking at, let's say you're 50, 55, somewhere there, 60 years old, and you're going, if I've done this wrong, I'm running out of years. I can't, make course corrections right before we get to the landing strip. I've got to make sure I'm on it. So that's why people would come to us, to help you to understand where you are, help you to define your goals, and then analyze the living daylights out of it to make sure that, I hate to say it that way, but we do a lot.
That's good.
And make sure that we've looked at all the different scenarios that could possibly happen to you, and then the things that you think may happen to you. Can I do an example?
Sure.
Let me do an example. So we had a couple come in, and they had a pretty lofty income goal and a little bit of money. They had about $1.4 million or something like that, a pretty good pile of money. But their income goal was over $100,000 a year, and they were going to quit at 62. And I'm like, beep, 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 little thing going off. And sure enough, they didn't, it really wasn't going to work. And I'm like, you need to save more or work longer or something. Maybe we cut the goal down some, and they really didn't want to do that. And then they threw the rest of the ingredients in. They said, and by the way, my wife's mother's not very healthy, and we're going to inherit another $1.5 million. And I'm like, well, that changes things a little bit. And so you have to work through this and get everything lined up. Just thinking that, we're psychic, or thinking that you get nervous about it. No, we're here for you. We're working for you to put these analysis together. And what ultimately comes out of analyzing this stuff is we build out a real plan specific for you.
The other thing, this wasn't in the survey, but I'm going to throw this out, Craig and Mark. What would you say the percentage of people that come in that when we're looking at their overall affairs, that their estate plan really isn't where it needs to be? Either they don't have an estate plan, or maybe it's been, created 2019 or before, maybe in another state, they've acquired things. What would you say the percentage of those folks are, Craig, that we see?
Probably 60.
60%?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I see is this.
I was going to say more 25, but
no,
you see
I do
more
a
than
lot
I
of
do.
them.
Yeah.
So I'll have people come in, they're $5 or $6 million, maybe a business. They don't even have a will. And I'm like, guys, TikTok, this could really go wrong if you pass away. And so I'm insistent on that. We had a couple come in the other day, a physician and somebody that owned a bunch of restaurants, great couple, smart. didn't really have the will thing laid out. And I'm like, you realize a lot could go wrong here. And so when we prioritize things, they said, what do you think's number one? I said, what do you think? And they came back and they said, kind of pushed hard on getting the estate docs done first. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to have that done first, because then everything else we can work towards, and we can direct the assets that you have in the right direction.
And it gives us a peace of mind as financial advisors that you've gotten that piece, like you said, out of the way. If something were to happen, we can deal with the investments and changing your plan and modifying where your things are invested, but we really need to get that foundational work done, and that's that estate plan, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney.
It's all about control, and that gives you, we're talking to you folks out there, the control over what's going to happen, rather it being something that could happen and you who knows what would happen.
Yeah.
So sorry to deviate, but I thought that was, we see that a lot.
Yeah, you took me way off of my path here.
That's good stuff, though. Hey, so check this out. What do you think about this one? More than half of the folks surveyed in this, this survey from these financial advisors, that the average client has around $760,000 in assets. To me, you're always hearing that people aren't planning, well for retirement. That's not a bad number. $750,000 is not, chump change.
That's a nice chunk of change.
Yes.
I like that. So if you have assets in that area, you have something that you can work with. If you don't have much money, Social Security becomes more important. If you don't have much money, how are you going to pay and have the lifestyle that you want? So yeah, I hate to just say it that way, but it's a bad situation to roll in at 65 and you go, I don't have enough money to support the lifestyle that I want. So we need to work on that. If you're young enough and you're saying, how do I hit a goal? Those are things that we can work with you on. We can say, what is the lifestyle you want at 60 or 65 years old when you stop going to work every day? You give us a number, and we can work backwards to show you what you would have to do each year, and here's how much you have to save to get into that number based on some rate of return. And so those are things that, yes, you need to look at that first, and then once you have your pile of money, your nest egg that's built, how are you going to distribute it properly?
And I would say for our practice and the people that sit in front of us, Craig, myself, and Cameron, most people will sit down, they have north of that $760,000 of assets. They've done very well saving. They have accumulated different piles of cash and money and investments and business, et cetera. And our practice is really geared around and complements those higher net worth individuals.
38% of the folks surveyed said they outliving their assets was the number one concern. That's pretty much always the case, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Running out of money before you pass away is a bad thing.
And I think I would say 76% of the people that come in, even if they have $1 million or $2 million, that is the number one concern.
Yeah. So that stays pretty much in line with what you guys see as well. 31% generating reliable income. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I would go with that. But most folks don't understand how to generate.
I was going to say,
income.
I don't think they really understand that concept, Craig.
When you get to retirement, think about this. What can you control? So if you have your money in the stock market, it's a great place to be for long term. It really is. But short term, you can lose a bunch of money in a real hurry. If you're withdrawing from that volatile investment, can you survive it? Because if things go down 15, 20% and you're pulling out every single month so much money, you're pulling from a declining asset base. And that's a double whammy. That's how you go broke pretty quickly. So you have to design a plan around, how do I generate revenue? You need things that pay you. You don't need things that go up and down because you ran out of time. If you're 60, 65 years old, be realistic. If you're going to use this money, you need to design your investment portfolio around the fact that you're going to have a cash flow that's going to satisfy what you need above whatever else is coming in, above Social Security or above your pension. If you need more money, how is it going to come to you, and can you depend on it being there for the rest of your life.
Wouldn't you say, Craig, that most people come with the concern that they're going to outlive their money, but then it's our job to show them how we build that reliable income stream and look at the different options and kind of talk about the pros and cons about how those income streams work in their plan?
Yeah, I talk about this bucketing strategy. I don't like the mental image, but it's the best I can do. Safe money for the short terms, income, which is the number 2 buckets. What do I have that's paying me money? Real money, not 1 or 2%. If I'm getting, 6, 7, 8% in a yield, that's magic. You can do something with that, and you absolutely need to have bucket number 3, which is I'm going to build some of this out for the future to take care of inflation and future goals, but I don't have to use that more volatile, more aggressive investment in the day-to-day for most of it. So generating reliable income, yeah, I think that's a very important part, and I can see where 31% of the people would say, I'm concerned about how to do that.
We talked about a couple of numbers, guys. 38% outliving their assets was a big concern. 31% said generating reliable income. Then it takes a big nosedive down to 13% concerned about a future stock market crash. Now, to be fair, Craig, this survey was completed back in December of 24 versus right now. You think that number would change a little bit today?
Maybe a little bit.
And should it?
Percentage-wise, it's not that bad. I hate to say that. If it's your money, if you watch the value go down some, if you have a lot of equity investments, yeah, you're probably a little nervous. But a future stock market crash should make people pay attention. The last word is the key word, crash. Think about the last time we actually had a crash. That was COVID. It was like a faceplant. Things went down about 35%, and it did it in about a month. That was a bad crash. But then what did the government do? Print, and off the market went. If
it
you
didn't
go
stay
back
down for long, did it?
No. If you look at 2008, they didn't know what to do. They did the same thing. We had a collapse of our financial system. And the government said, do I let banks fail or do I get the shovel out and start bailing? What do I do? And so they bailed, and they printed a lot of money from 2008 until really about the last part of 2014. It wasn't as quick as this last one that they did during COVID, but daggum, they put a lot of money in the economic system. So stocks are very expensive. Things could crash, but there has to be a catalyst for the crash. It's not just, things are too high, they're going to go down. That's a correction. A crash means something bad happened. Bad. And so I don't think many people are thinking that there's going to be a market crash. And if you've structured your plan for retirement the proper way, the stock market really isn't the central point of your future. You have things that are generating income and they're not reliant on the value of the underlying investment going up. They're paying you something much different.
The last prolonged downturn was, right, the financial housing crisis back in 08, 09. So,
right.
So it's easy to kind of, we all love it when it's up, right? So then none of us like it when it's down, which is why we start to panic.
I got to tell you a story. I was down in Charlotte visiting a company, and there was a young fellow in there, and he starts talking about the market crash in 2008. And what did I do? I looked at him and said, "You weren't even born in 08, were you?"
We're approaching 20 years.
And I was right.
Yeah. We are approaching 20 years since the last prolonged downturn, right?
Yeah.
So
right.
when it gets a little choppy like it is right now, I get people panicking, but you also don't want to over-panic, right? You want to have a good strategy in place. So.
Well, you have to have a plan.
Yeah, for sure. So back to this topic here. So then we go to 8%, guys, on future healthcare costs. So that was a concern. Only 8%. This really kind of surprised me. Now, if it was some younger folks taking this survey, I guess maybe that makes a little bit of sense. But also in that same context, the advisor said they feel like this should be a much bigger number for people to be concerned about. What do you think?
Well, I was going to say, when I sit down with couples or individuals, only time I really get, healthcare cost question and a concern is people that actually have a current healthcare issue. Most healthy people going into retirement don't really contemplate the potential cost and devastation that those elevated costs may have on their savings and what that would leave the, surviving spouse, whether they're, destitute or not. So that is a big concern. When we run our analysis, that is one of the scenarios we run because we want our prospective clients to see, okay, what if this happened to your portfolio? What would that do? What would it mean? How does it make you feel if there's a gap? And how can we potentially close that gap and give you a little bit more peace of mind.
So if you think about it, Jennifer, when your mom she lived with us for about 2 years, became ill, and we had to do home health care, and it was out of pocket. She was way past the point to where we could discuss even having anything for home health care. And it was $5,000 or $6,000 a month, wasn't it? I mean, that's
the average in North Carolina.
Chump change. I mean, people came in. She was well fed. She was clean. She was comfortable. She was, if she wanted to read a book or if she wanted to watch TV or get out in the sunshine, somebody there to help her, but at a cost. And so it's not inexpensive. Is a double negative. It's expensive to do that, and you need to have thought about, how am I going to pay that if it happens to myself? How am I going to do that? And we need to work with you on a plan. That doesn't mean you have to have insurance. Maybe you have enough money, but you need to be comfortable knowing that that's the case and not just hope that it's going to happen to somebody else and not you.
And there are a lot of variables in covering those healthcare costs that, when you come and sit down and talk with us, we can talk about, do we create a pot of money that you can pull on? What are the triggering events to start using it? Do you want to have a licensed person provide these home services, or do you want a family member to be able to provide them? So there's lots of different ways to skin this cat, but I think you need to look at the cat, right? To know to know what it means for you in your particular situation.
Yeah, very true. And there's a lot of interesting information in here on the survey. And again, we can share some of that. If folks want to check it out in the podcast form, we'll put a link to that if they'd like to click on that and check some of this stuff out. As far as family goes and continuing family information, guys, well, check this out. More than 1/3 of the advisors surveyed mentioned the challenges associated that their clients see supporting not only their adult children, but their aging parents. Obviously, we've talked about that many times on the show. Is that something that more and more people are concerned about when they come in to see you?
Well, you have to watch after your kids. Who are we kidding? You can't just be hard and say, no, you sleep here. Which underpass do I come visit you at? You would take care of your kids if they need them. I will say that we have 3 of our 4 kids have come back post-college and stayed with us at some point. So yes, I mean, it's an expense. You have to feed them. What does it cost to have that same place? We were talking to somebody the other day, and they're looking at a new apartment, $1,600 a month. And I'm like, man, $1,600 a month for an apartment, And so folks, if your kids are living at home, tell them to start paying you. No,
But yeah, I think, and really it depends upon each family. Some families are blessed and their kids are very self-sufficient and moving on and successful, and maybe they're not even in the same state. And there are other families that, maybe there are some, turnover or turmoil, divorce situation or whatever, and that they do want to be there and provide that safety net. And then, our parents are living longer. So we do have a sandwich generation going on, and it does create some angst because more likely than not, these people are still working, right? The clients are still working, but then they've got these two sides that they try to balance and keep happy and have it run well.
And you don't want to spend your retirement nest egg taking care of your children. I hate to say that, but You have to, at some point, understand this is as much as I can contribute to my child's.
Yeah, it's got to be a balance, right? You've got to have that.
You cannot go broke taking care of a child at your home to the exclusion of the rest of your life, which might be 20 or 30 years in retirement.
And that's one of the values of actually doing the planning and running the numbers, because then you can see the potential impact to your retirement versus trying to, put your finger in the mouth and putting, in the air and seeing where the wind blows, or feeling guilty. Am I, not paying enough? Should I do more? You actually can quantify those numbers, and it gives the people that come see us, gives them a little bit of peace of mind, a little bit of a backbone to say, no, this is what we need to do, and be able to separate the two needs and financial burdens.
Yeah.
But it really does come down to planning, and you have your numbers and you know where your line in the sand is. If you're in that situation, if you've got parents, you've got children, and you don't know where that line is, give us a call, 336-448-1086, and let's run your numbers and give you some information so you can make informed decisions.
Well, let's finish up with this last piece here, guys, and then we'll wrap it up for today. But according to the survey, 63% of clients aged 55 or older intend to work to 65 and older. Do your your clients end up working past 65? Do you think it's the right approach for people, or are you just seeing more people that want to work longer than maybe ever before?
Honestly, most of the people that come to us are trying to get out a little earlier.
Okay.
Frankly, and I will say this, it's a cliche, but forgive me for saying it, but retirement is a dollar amount. It's not an age. I don't know who came up with work to 65. I guess that's the old when Social Security came on or when
Right.
their pension would turn on. But in these days, you have to be realistic. Do I have enough money saved plus whatever other sources of income? I'll use Social Security, but it could be a myriad of different things. At the end of this time, do I have enough to support the lifestyle that I want from, say, we'll take 65, but from 65 maybe to 85, 90, that's 22 years, something like that. If you live to normal life expectancy, that your money has to last as long as you do. So consider that when you're talking about retirement. It's not an age. You might be tired of it, but at the end of the day, do you have enough to get you where you need to be?
Yeah. And Jen, this is where the planning process comes in, right? So go through that and find out, not only for your age, but for your numbers and just all the factors that build into it.
And it's interesting. We'll sit down and talk with a client, and they say, "Yes, I want to retire on let's say $100,000, and let's go ahead and have me live till 90." And then we run the analysis, and there might be a gap. And they says, "Well, I don't think I'm going to live to 90. Let's just see if it runs to 80." And I'm like,
No.
it's like
Wrong plan.
Yeah, it's like, well, let's think about this. Do you want your money to be bone dry at 80, and then at 81 you got to figure out another plan,
Right.
or do you want to go ahead and make sure that you can actually live potentially longer and you're still comfortable? Which side of that coin feels better to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the analysis helps, but it's interesting to see how people react to the results and what they think they can cut out to make it work, right?
And that's for the ones that don't make it. A lot of folks that come to see us, slam dunk.
Mm-hmm.
I've looked at people and said, okay, you say you're going to work another 5 years. We ran one of these where you're done today, you're home free. You would have to work very hard to mess this up.
Okay. No, that's
And
good.
so it's kind of nice. Once you get everything built, think about it. I have a plan. I understand for long-term care. I understand for income. I understand for longevity, giving to my kids. At that point, that's confidence, folks, when you can look at it and say, I know that I know. Can you say that today? That's a real question.
Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have any questions about what we've discussed, remember, you can get a complimentary financial review with the team at Maestro Wealth Advisors by calling 336-448-1086 or go online to howmoneyworksradio.com for other great resources and ways to reach the team. You can also check the show notes of today's episode for our contact information as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the most popular apps. For Craig and Jennifer Moser, I'm Mark Killian. We'll talk to you next time on the How Money Works podcast.
Craig Moser is a financial advisor and certified financial planner. Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through Avantax Affiliated Insurance Agency.